guys. Thanks for following along with the journey recently. Today is day 33, and today I'm going to talk about the idea of seeking validation and also the idea that emotions get stronger when we go on this journey. So first I'll start with the validation part. So what you may notice when you're on this journey is that there was a part of you before that was constantly seeking some sort of validation from others. And for me, I didn't notice this because when you're constantly in this state, all you're feeling really is the numbness, and basically you're feeling all of your physical and emotional needs as a human. You're basically taking those and squashing them down so that you're not feeling any of those things. And what you may notice as time goes on is that you will start to realize that you're not getting validation sometimes. And in a strange way, when you participate in this addictive behavior, you are getting validation from that. I know it sounds strange, but you're in some way, shape, or form, you are actually feeling like you accomplished something, and that is validation. But what you'll notice is that you are going to stop having those feelings of validation, and sometimes it's going to feel really bad at first. You're going to feel like trash some days, especially at the beginning of the journey, because you're like, is this worth it? Like, I'm not getting what I want, I'm not feeling fulfillment. And that is a symptom of the addiction talking, because the addiction basically has rewired your brain to feel like it needs constant validation. And if we're always receiving constant validation, there's no reason for us to work harder at being a better version of ourselves, at our careers, etc. And some people still manage to work somewhat proficiently, although in my opinion I think it's impossible to work as proficiently if you're in this addictive state. But even if you are able to sort of manage, you're not trying to take the next step in your life. You're not looking for that greater version of yourself, your greater version of your career even. So that is one of the, it may seem like it's a con of this at first, because you're like, oh, I'm not getting this validation, but it's actually a good thing, because as more time goes on, you get used to not having the validation, and you're like, oh, I just need to work harder at what I'm doing to get another source of validation. And this will push you into more uncomfortable territory. It'll push you to get into situations that maybe aren't as familiar to you, but are the thing that will likely make you better. So that's why I think it's so important for everyone who is even mildly addicted to this to give this a shot, even just for a month, and just see how you feel. Because I think what you'll notice is the first couple weeks are always terrible, but if you make it through a month, you will start to see some of these benefits creep in. And I can tell you, I'm in a much better state than I was, really have been in a long time mentally, I think, which is crazy considering all the life changes I just had, but I feel much more grounded emotionally than I have in a very long time. And the other thing too is you're going to seek, with the last thing I'll say on validation, and I'll move on to the other topic, but you will also find that you're seeking more validation from people, because like when you're in the addictive state, I'm saying, you will not feel the best about yourself internally, or at least I didn't. And so I found that I was seeking validation from people in my life a lot more, like, oh, like, can you tell me, well, I wasn't asking this, but in my head I'm like, oh, I want to hear these people say that I'm doing a good job, and I want these people to say they're proud of me and stuff like that. The thing about that though is that you have to give yourself your own validation, and if you know that you're working hard and doing the very best that you can, you're not going to need that validation as much. I'm not saying you'll never want validation, but you're going to start to feel like you can do it without others. And that's a really powerful thing, to be a self-motivated person. So the second thing I wanted to talk about is emotional intensity during this. So what you may notice is that your emotions, you've always dealt with them. You've always had emotions, even when you were in the state of addiction. But you're going to find that emotions are going to be much more intense when you are doing this. And it does level out and it gets easier. But especially during the first month, you are going to have a lot of ups and downs. And sometimes, especially if you haven't dealt with some of these underlying emotions, you're going to feel like it's too much sometimes, and it's going to feel so overwhelming that you're like, I haven't felt anything this bad or this wrong in a long time. But it's those moments where if you can make it through those moments, you're going to be feeling so much better in the long run. They feel like such a long time when you're going through them, but it's really just a short moment where maybe you're freaking out about something that happened in your day, or maybe like you start to panic because like somebody is not talking to you, or if you're something didn't go well at work, you start to go into panic mode and you're like, oh, I can't handle this anxiety. But here's the thing, you can handle it, and if you do handle it in a healthy way, that's going to start to build on that confidence even more, and you're going to start to feel like, wait a second, like I can do this. I don't need this to feel like emotionally grounded, and actually this is going to make you feel a lot more emotionally grounded if you don't. So you have to kind of be prepared for that though, because during this whole process, even just this time, I've done this journey many times before, but even this time especially, because I had gone through so much, I was faced with some really tough emotions that were hard to process and hard to deal with. And quite frankly, I don't even know how I did sometimes, because some of them were very difficult. But I did get through them, and I do think that talking about it has helped. Connecting with friends and doing the therapy helped a lot with that. But it was not easy, you know. There were moments where I felt like on the borderline of giving up. There were moments where I wasn't sure if I was going to be okay again, you know. And these are actually pretty extreme situations, because, you know, I went through one of the most difficult periods of my life while I was doing this, so you may not have this intense of an experience with it. But because I got through it, it made me realize that I can handle anything. If I can do this, I can handle anything. And that thought really has given me a lot of comfort and motivation during all this. So yeah, what I will say, if I were to give you one piece of advice about this emotional intensity, is that it's not going to be easy, but if you can come up with other things to take the place of those emotions, and not just that, but you do have to deal with them to some extent. Sometimes if you find yourself spiraling, it's good to redirect your focus onto another task, like going for a walk or just doing something outside, or anything that you love, really. Anything that takes you out of that thought loop that you're having. But the other thing, and this is a really powerful one, is you do need to acknowledge the thought, because if you never acknowledge it and investigate it a little bit, you're never going to move past it. So what I mean by this is, if you have a thought that is really taking over your mind, and it just keeps coming and it keeps coming no matter how much you try to stop it. Sometimes you do have to pause and reflect on it and say, well, wait a second, where is this thought coming from? And then maybe it's coming from a moment where you felt disrespected by someone, and maybe through that disrespect you feel like you're not good enough for that person. Maybe that's the underlying thought that keeps happening, but really your mind is turning it into all sorts of other things. Like it's in defense mode, so it's like attacking the other person, or it's starting to think like, well, I did this and that, and you come up with all these reasons to justify why the other person's wrong. But really you have to think more inwardly than that, and you need to think to yourself, okay, like, why do I feel like this? Why did that make me feel bad? And maybe it's because you felt misunderstood. Maybe it's because you feel like you weren't listened to. And in those moments, you have to become your own best friend or mentor. So you have to start to say things to yourself like, you didn't deserve that, you know? You were misunderstood. And you can even say like, you know, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, like you're talking to yourself. And then you think to yourself, but you didn't deserve that, and that is not your fault. Sometimes people do things they don't mean to, or maybe they just weren't thinking about it the same way. And you really have to kind of like go through it and investigate it like that, and then kind of nurture yourself a little bit. Because too often in this life, guys, we're too hard on ourselves. I have been way too hard on myself in my life before, and it does no favors. Absolutely no favors. So I'm gonna leave you guys with that today, but I will update probably around day 37. I'm trying to do like either once a week or bi-weekly right now. But thanks for tuning in. Stay cool and have a good week.